Okay, so let's move on past the foundations. Okay, so we'll start with item 2.1 on the above grade walls. And as you may know, item 2.2 is going to require a continuous drainage plane behind the exterior cladding on walls, but we'll need to deal with this water once it reaches the bottom of the wall. We can't just trap it there. And that's the purpose of item 2.1, to provide flashing at the bottom of the exterior walls that kicks that water away from the house. In addition, you need a channel or tunnel through masonry veneers like brick facing and for stucco coatings so that the water can move from the bottom of the drainage plane to the exterior of the cladding systems. For masonry veneers, these are called weep holes, and for stucco, these are called weep screeds. You can see in this image the flashing at the bottom of the drainage plane and the weep hole for the water to exit behind the brick. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for there. On item 2.3, we're looking for window and door openings to be fully flashed. This is important because windows and doors create kind of hotspots for potential leakage in the exterior drainage system. Water can leak into the home through these openings, either onto the interior walls or into the wall cavity itself. And that'll be undetected for years until somebody sees the caulk is missing and starts poking a knife around and realize the whole wall is rutted. So the ASTM standard for this is E2112. That's one good resource for helpful guidance. But regardless, you need to make sure you flash in this order. You start with the pan flashing over the sill framing, inclusive of the corners. That's step one here. Then you apply side flashing over the pan flashing. So work from your bottom up. And then number 3, apply the top flashing over the side flashing. So this is gonna ensure that you've got everything flashed kind of in the correct order and solve those weak spots. Now let's move to the roof, and I'm moving through these kind of quickly just in the sake of timing because I think these are pretty well understood compared to some of the foundation ones. On the roof, first up is item 3.1, which requires step and kick out flashing. It's got to extend at least 4 inches up the wall surface and out onto the roof deck and be integrated with the drainage plane above. Again, this intersection is a weak spot for the exterior drainage system. And it's important to lap the drainage plane from the wall on top of the step flashing and to lap the shingles on top of the flashing. So it's basically what we're saying is just make sure you think about how the water's flowing here and don't tuck your raincoat into your underwear is, kind of the Joe Stiebrickism on this one. This image right here. We're showing a good example of this. And I'll leave it there for the sake of time. Hopefully that one makes sense. This one, again, I think this makes a good amount of sense. In general, what we're asking for here is that your gutters and downspouts, you have an extension on it, a lateral pipe to bring it at least 5 foot from the foundation, or to an underground catchment system that's at least 10 foot from the foundation. There is an exception here that if you can show that your sorry, I'm just looking for this. So there are 3 exceptions here. Okay, so first, gutters and downspouts are not required in 2009 ICC dry climates. They're, to your point, Brett, they're also not required for slab on grade construction. And third, they're not required if the home does not have expansive or collapsible soils, which is kind of the worst case scenario. Those can lead to a really severe structural issue. But if you're going to rely on that one, you also need to get a soil report and kind of go through that hurdle of doing that. So I think in general, this is really a great idea that you should be doing and not be trying to overuse these exceptions.
Those soil reports, are those have to be site specific, or are there statewide or citywide or regional reports that we can find online of certain locations?
They do need to be site specific because what you'll find with the regional maps is they'll give you kind of a percentage, like the likelihood, and so it can give you some sense of like, is this going to be a problem, or not? But you don't know until you test it at the particular site. So you do need an engineer to give you a site specific report there. Yep. There is one alternative to gutters and downspouts, and that's having a roof design without gutters, as long as it deposits rainwater to a grade level rock bed with a waterproof liner and a drain pipe that deposits the water on a sloping finish grade 5 feet from the foundation. So that's kind of like a very specific kind of xeriscaping-esque design that you might see like on a more modern, architecturally modern home. So if you see that, that is also acceptable. But in general, for your kind of standard home, you're gonna want that downspout extension. Okay, this next item requires a self-sealing bituminous. This is always a mouth twister for me. Bituminous membrane or equivalent to be installed at all valleys and roof deck penetrations. These are areas that have been identified as being prone to failure due to water damage. This is really just experience that's taught us this. You've probably heard of a home with a failure here. It's important to provide this extra layer of protection. This membrane should first be installed directly on the roof sheathing, as demonstrated in this image, and an alternative option builders have is using metal flashing with a cement backer. This will meet the same intent of protecting these vulnerable areas on the roof. This next one's going to be CZ5 and higher, and I'm going to move through it pretty quickly, which is to say you also need this membrane installed at eaves in CZ5 and higher. This next item here is for cement board at tub and shower walls. The seams, such as caulk joints, are more prone to leaks, and so therefore, if moisture resistant backer materials are used, the risk of water damage is reduced if these leaks occur when it's moisture resistant. One exception to this requirement is for fiberglass assemblies without any seams, so that would be acceptable, and other monolithic enclosures. So to be clear, paper-faced backer board cannot be used as a moisture resistant material here. And the last one we'll touch on is pretty simple. Item 4.6, this requires a corrosion resistant drain pan beneath each condensate producing HVAC component, like an AC evaporator. This drain pan must drain to a conspicuous point of disposal so the homeowner can see whether it's blocked. In addition, if you're draining to a shared drainage system, then you need to include a backflow prevention valve. We moved through some of those pretty quickly in the interest of time, but in about a half an hour there, we covered 11 of the 15 items in our sample house. Those are the ones that we've gotten most questions about, and I'm glad that we did have a chance to cover some of those questions today. Let's summarize what we've discussed briefly here. The water management system builder requirements add value to a home by improving its durability, reducing the builder's liability, and helping comply with code. It's 21 common sense details for the roof, walls, foundation, and building materials, but not all items apply to every home. And no paperwork is required to demonstrate compliance with each home. Finally, you're probably meeting most of all of these requirements already. So what can you do to learn more? First, download the water management system builder requirements or any of our other program requirements at energystar.gov/new homes requirements, all one word. And this is the purple page on the right. You'll see all of our program requirements links there on the right. You'll also find a ton of additional training on these specific requirements at DOE's Building America Solutions Center. That's at basc.pnnl.gov. I think, Brett, I want to leave it to you in terms of perhaps we should skip the poll questions for the sake of time here.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so Dean's contact information is here, so we didn't have time to update it with mine, but you can get in touch with either of us through him or just our general line at energystarhomes@energystar.gov. And I'm happy to stick on afterwards here after Brett kind of wraps us up here and answer a couple other questions if there are any. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Brett, and thanks again for having us on today.
Yeah. Thanks again, Elliot. And we do have some more time for questions. We want to get to some more of these questions coming in. Before we get to those questions, there are a couple things I want to go over. The first being how all of this fits into the LEED for Homes certification. And quite in reality, actually, many of the green building certifications, whether it be the DOE Zero Energy Ready program or the Enterprise Green Communities program for new construction, or our Green Star program, many of them all follow or rely on the Energy Star water management. So in regards to LEED, I would say there are some differences, very minor differences from what Elliot just said. The first being that in the case of LEED, we actually do need to see that checklist completed and submitted by the builder who used the checklist on site for quality management and ensuring it was done correctly. And so that would be something that the builder would fill out almost like an accountability saying, yep, we filled this out, we completed it, this was done right, and here it is. So that is something required under the materials and resources section as a prerequisite for the durability management, as you can see here from the credit resource library. Now there is an exemption or an allowance that says if a builder wants to create their own checklist. So for example, if they're typically building in a certain climate zone all the time, they might pre-remove some of those things that they don't need to worry about, so they don't have to bother with it all the time. So that is certainly allowable for your team to create their own checklist in their own program. As long as it has all the requirements listed on it, they can sign that and use it if it's more user-friendly for them for submission of LEED. I will say we don't often, as a LEED provider, we barely ever see anyone create their own, but it certainly is allowable and something worth looking into if it makes it simpler. So that's the requirement. Now moving on to the credit, which is quite intuitive for many projects. In this case, you're just simply contracting with the LEED for Homes Green Rater and the verification team to show up on site and do some more inspections and take on the liability or some of the liability for the durability management verification. So you're basically saying, now it's not just the builder verifying it, but we're going to pass it off to a third-party Green Rater to have them verify it and then have the LEED provider, review what they've seen and make sure it was done right. So this is an extra point in the system. So believe it or not, the LEED Green Rater just needs to make sure the checklist was signed off. They don't actually have to check all of these things in the field unless you want to go for this point. Now I will say many Green Raters aren't comfortable doing this. This is almost the job of a home inspector. They might partner with a home inspector to do this. Other Green Raters I've heard come up with a strategy with the builder because it is a lot of travel to the site to photo document some of this stuff on photo documenting these items. But it is an extra point if you want to pursue it, if you have the rater also sign on that form or some creation of that form and just verify this was done on the site. Now, what about gut rehab? So there are some exemptions in the program if you read down in the fine print for homes that are doing renovations. But in many cases, this program actually and Elliot, I'll give you a chance if you want to speak to it a little bit. But in many cases, this program makes gut rehabs unaffordable because some of the stuff you need to do is very expensive under the foundation, behind the walls, and it's just very cost prohibitive. But Lead V 4.1, should it get adopted as it currently stands, has for the most part said for most of this checklist, you can ignore a majority of it if there's not a problem that's visually, apparent as far as moisture issues go. So, there's no reason to dig up the slab and, fix some of these issues, or to, slope the house on an existing home if there isn't an apparent moisture problem. So it's kind of taking it's not broke, don't fix it approach. And so V4.1 for single family has sort of opened rehabs back up to say, there is a way to still certify. Again, they're not going to certify water damaged homes, but without complying with all these items. So okay, great. And then let's move on to questions now. Before we get there, if you're wondering how to get your CEUs, just again make sure to take that survey that pops up or is emailed to you. It's the same survey, just take it once. For those of you watching this in the future on demand, the recording, please take that 80%, or please take that quiz and get an 80% passing rate. If you're submitting CEUs to us, the way you can do that is head down to the YouTube link. This is for you watching on demand on our YouTube channel. And then on the left there, click Show More. And then on the right, you can find a link that says take the quiz, download it, and submit it to us, and follow the instructions on the quiz. And before we get to those questions that are coming in, I just wanted to say a huge thanks to all of our members, 80 members as of last year, our board of directors, our volunteers, and of course our top tier sponsors, Panasonic Ventilation. Meets all your ventilation needs from complying with code to now new smart ventilation coming out this year. T-Stud structurally insulated framing systems that save energy and money behind the walls. Mitsubishi Electric going all electric net zero for single family, multifamily, new and existing buildings, heat pumps, and our sponsor Build Equinox and Ream as well. So Elliot, I'm gonna pull you back in here for some questions, and before those come in, I guess I just wondered if you could go over some of the briefly exemptions that might exist for existing homes with the water management program.
Perfect, great. Yep, just getting unmuted there. Well, I think you kind of nailed it, Brett. As far as the water management system, there's really no exceptions for existing homes, and so I think those will be the barrier in a lot of cases to doing it for existing homes. So it's certainly possible. The fact of the matter is, because we get this question a lot, and I think um, basically let's put on the table right away that the program is definitely designed with new homes in mind as its primary focus. So there's nothing to stop you from certifying an existing home, but it's probably going to be onerous, and especially the kind of foundation stuff and some of the drainage requirements could very likely make you say, yeah, we're not going to get an Energy Star certified in this case. So as far as Lead for Homes, again, there's exceptions built in for that program. There, yeah, I would just leave it there. I would say, basically there are no exceptions. We do recognize that. We have talked about it in the past, but kind of our focus remains on new homes, and so that's kind of the why the program requirements are the way they are.
So the other question I had, I guess, is just how do people, is there a way for folks to engage? Is there any kind of public comment for when these programs change or update with EPA, where people can weigh in and say, maybe this doesn't make any sense anymore, or maybe there's something you haven't thought about. Is there any way for the public to engage on these programs?
Absolutely. There's a number of ways. When the program goes through major version changes, we definitely do a very public public comment period, etc. But we haven't really been in that situation since version 3 was released in 2008, 2009. In terms of our revision releases, we do have kind of a preview of that every year at our stakeholder meeting, which is usually in September or October. If you're interested in attending that meeting, certainly let us know and we'll kind of get you on the invite list for that. That's a really nice collection of about 100 participants, builders, raters, utilities, to kind of get everybody in the room and talking about, what should we be doing, what's coming down the pike, and then what should we be thinking about for the future of the program. But honestly, most of what we do is just talking to folks. So I think just reaching out to Dean and/or I directly is really how most of the program requirements get updated at this point. If it's an issue on a particular project, sometimes we can help you work through that. And then sometimes it's stuff that leads to a tweak to the program requirements in the future. So again, that's really an ongoing process that kind of happens continuously all the time. So that's why, I kind of referenced that several times as we talked through some of the more tricky questions. I think it's a lot of those were good examples of the types of things that we really like to hear directly from you. If you can provide us some background, provide us some materials, we can have a really kind of substantive one-on-one discussion about it and see if it sort of justifies a program change in this case. And it's not just for stuff that's a problem. If there's stuff that you think that we're missing, we should be doing, we can be doing, etc. We like to hear that too.
Great. Well, we're pretty much at our time here. I don't see any other questions. So Elliot, I really appreciate, well, Dean, I know you're on there, so feel better, and thanks for helping put this together. And Elliot, thanks for jumping in last minute. And just right before we head out, where can people go? Just remind people where they can go to find out more information if they'd like to learn more.
Absolutely. So from a technical perspective, the best place to start is our technical website link there, www.energystar.gov/new homes requirements. And then I'll refer back a few slides back to the Building America Solutions Center has a lot of great details and additional educational information on every item, kind of organized item by item. So that's where you really can dig in.
All right. Well, thank you again. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.